Hello everyone and welcome back to Nerd Culture. You're watching Nerdy Gamer and I'm your host for today, Travis Troller. And today we're going to be talking about 2018's Vampyr. Vampyr is an action role-playing video game developed by Don't Nod Entertainment and published by Focus Home Interactive. And it sets in 1918 London, where you play as Jonathan Reed, a surgeon/researcher turned vampire during the Spanish flu epidemic, who is torn between his oath as a medical professional and his bloodthirsty nature as he seeks out the one who turned him. I felt the story was not only super ironic with what we're given, but also super captivating in a way, just with the main character alone you play as, because they're constantly dealing with a strong sense of duality, having to dance between the two sides of the methodical doctor trying to help and aid everybody and sticking to his oath as a medical professional, or the vicious, bloodthirsty vampire that you have become trying to suppress or give in to your bloodthirsty needs. And that comes with a very interesting aspect when introducing yourself to characters, because then you start to learn about these characters and you have the power to make the decision on who lives or who dies by choosing your victims carefully and embracing them in order to get things like blood points. But we'll get into that a little bit later. And of course, there's an underlying theme of your character moving through the story because they are very desperate to find their creator, the person that is responsible for turning you into the so-called, quote, monster. But overall, I gotta hand it to the developers, because as far as the world development goes, I mean, it's very full and rich with its characters, but the aesthetic of it all and the feeling of it all, it's very dark, it's very gritty, and it's very disease-ridden. So I think it does a good job at painting the picture it's trying to paint. As far as the gameplay goes, I found it somewhat interesting. You're given a map of London that is broken up into multiple sections, each one having its own personal state of health, along with members of the community that live within that section. And each one of those characters are very interesting and specific because they all play their own role. And it's up to you as a character to talk to all of them and learn about them and decide who's more important and who's not. And from doing so and gaining that intel, the game rewards you with XP that you can use later on in order to upgrade your abilities. I felt that was a really creative way of encouraging the gamer to actually take the time, wander around, talk to the NPCs, and really learn about them, their stories. And I found it in most moments actually quite hard to choose who I wanted to live and who I wanted to die, because either I was very connected and attached to one character, or I couldn't touch them because I would come to find out that they were very vital to the community and it would completely destroy the section if I did something. Because I found out that the game has a system set up where if the status drops into hostile territory, it's completely unsavable. So I'd be spending my time running around trying to learn about these characters and give them medication and heal them, only to later find out it was all pointless, because once you hit the hostile state, it's immediately dead and no work you put towards it can save it. I personally wish the game would have done a better job at describing that instead of me learning it the hard way. You do this action called embracing, where you basically mesmerize them and take them to a dark corner somewhere out of sight of other local NPCs, and then you suck their blood in order to gain XP and blood points, which can be used for player upgrades. And the more you talk to that specific character and the more you learned about them, the more XP you would have gotten out of it, so it's a bigger payoff in the end. On the topic of the skill tree that the game gives you, I felt it was pretty basic and easy to follow. You have sections of the skill tree where you can spend points in order to gain new abilities, upgrade your health boosts, increase your carrying capacity for things like syringes that provide you health, or ammo pouches for your weapons, and so on. With the addition of workbenches that you can use to equip and customize weapons that you find throughout the game. These can be done in predetermined locations scattered around the entirety of the map in safe houses. And even though the game has its own autosave feature, I still found myself constantly going back to my safe houses, not only to upgrade my stuff, but just to guarantee I would have a save by resting after gaining my new abilities. But with that being said, I need to get into the very nitty-gritty of where I found some pros and some cons with this game, and that's going to be with the combat. Overall, I would say that the combat was okay. It's a little sloppy in some areas to the point where it can make it quite difficult to enjoy, and it could potentially be a deal breaker for most gamers. Your basic setup is you can have an on-hand weapon choice, whether it can be something ranging from a sword to a baseball bat with nails in it, or an offhand choice where it could be a gun like a pistol or a sawed-off shotgun that you can use to not only damage your enemies but also stun them. Every enemy you run into has a health and a stun bar, and if you break away enough of that stun meter, then they get into a dazed phase where you are allowed to embrace them and bite them on the neck in order to gain more blood points in the battle and use that to activate your abilities. I'm not gonna lie, the combat was really hard at first, but once I found a system that worked for me, like getting a two-handed weapon that does both damage and stun damage, I personally found that the game got a little bit easier, and frankly more enjoyable. But my opinion will not change on the lock-on mechanic for this game. I tried using it, and maybe it's because I'm on PC and it's a little bit more sensitive, but I found myself switching between characters consistently in battle and always at the worst times. Right when I'm in mid-swing trying to hit one person, he would completely do a 180 and try to swing at somebody who's 3 feet behind him, and I just found it kind of frustrating. But at the end of the day, I just turned it off, and I found that free swinging in the general area of an enemy does the job even better, to me personally. The game has no minimap. You're forced to open up the main menu and go into the tab for the map, which doesn't sound like a big deal to some. I kind of found it a little irritating that I would have to keep going into the main menu, into the map every 2 seconds just to make sure I didn't miss a turn somewhere. And while we're on the topic of traveling throughout the city, I felt this game could have really benefited from a fast travel mechanic. And honestly, I was really surprised and a little disappointed that it didn't have that. I still feel like even now my opinion of this game is a little hard for me to explain, but overall I think Vampyr surprised me a little bit more than I expected in the long run. Even with the occasional headaches I get from most of the combat scenarios, it was the people, the story, and definitely the mystery of it all that kept me coming back for more. Now, is this a game I would recommend? Kind of. If you're the type of player who loves fast-paced action games and running in headfirst, plowing down everything in your path, even though there are some moments like that, this probably isn't the game for you. But for the people who like to be delved into the nooks and crannies of the world and explore all the history and character it has to offer, I would say in that aspect, give it a shot. But full disclosure, I would personally recommend waiting until it goes on sale like I did, just so you're not out a massive chunk of change if you find that you hate this game. And that could be possible, because at the end of the day, Vampyr is just one of those games where you simply won't know until you try it, and I kind of respect it for that aspect. But I want to hear from you guys. Have you played this game? What do you think of it? And would you recommend it to somebody? Put any and all comments down below. We would love to hear from you. And while you're at it, make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all of our newest videos as they come out. This is Travis Troller saying thank you once again for watching Nerd Culture, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Nerdy Gamer. Take care, guys.